Well, if you've traveled the highways and byways of Oklahoma lately, you're bound to have noticed one tree that seems to be everywhere, no matter where you go, and that is a prolific red cedar. Now, people have very different opinions on the red cedar. Some see it as a wonderful shelter for wildlife, a useful windbreak, or to just help in soil erosion. Now, others see it as a nuisance, encroaching on our farm and pasture lands. And many farmers and ranchers have even resorted to prescribed burnings and large-scale cutting to rid themselves of this tree. Well, one group, the Oklahoma Red Cedar Association, has come up with some quite innovative ways of using this tree. Mr. Bob Vincent of Morrison, Oklahoma, and Vice President of the Red Cedar Association, explains these reuse efforts for the cedar tree.
The Red Cedar Association is hoping to educate people in the use of Oklahoma's red cedar to manage this stuff as instead of a pest, but as a resource. We're trying to look at ways we can harvest the trees, utilize the products from them, and treat this, like I said, more as a resource instead of a pest in Oklahoma. Oklahoma's red cedar lumber is a very colorful and very unique piece of wood. It's the colors, the knot configurations, even the sapwood on the edge of the boards. We find this is in big demand all over the world. Its colors, it can just be brought out so beautifully, and even the disfigured wood that has a knot coming out of it or something, these things are being used to make shelves, benches, some tables are being made with this stuff, and it is such a colorful and unique wood. We're finding an enormous demand. We're really surprised at the demand we're having for this. Now, most of us have seen cedar chests made. Well, that's one of the products. The cedar chests, the dressers, many products are being used in cedar. And we're really thrilled with what we're finding in demand. And thing that's new to a lot of our thinking is there's an oil in this wood. And what we're looking at developing is the leaf oil, then the oil that's in the heartwood of the tree is, and this is something I was really surprised when I found out about it, it's the base oil of all the good perfumes of the world. And this is the oil, comes out of this red wood here, that makes the perfume essence last a long time. Now, the more or less cheaper perfumes are more alcohol based and they flash off more or less. And the cedar oil gives the perfume the longer lasting ability, and so that's another demand that we're finding in our Oklahoma Eastern red cedar is in the perfume industry. Another byproduct from the cedar wood is the shavings. The smaller features, the smaller items can be used. The cedar dust, the sawdust, is being used in everything from gerbil litter cages, parakeets, dog boxes. We're finding a big demand for dog owners to put the cedar shavings in their dog boxes. If anyone wanted to manage their red cedar growing in their pasture as a resource instead of a pest, we would like to encourage people to trim the bottom limbs off the little trees and let the grass grow right back up to the tree. That way it can grow, and yeah, it's going to take 20 years for that tree to come up and make a saw log, but meantime we've got the grass growing back. We can still run cattle with that tree. The tree becomes, environmentally friendly. It's going to be okay for nesting birds and all. The big trees, we'd rather encourage people not trim the big limbs off those trees because we tend to let rot come in and it's going to destroy the tree. So we need to harvest the big trees for lumber. For the resource we can get out of them, we can harvest the limbs, the leaf, the log, but let's leave the big tree alone as far as trimming it goes, unless you have to live around it and need to be able to get through it.
Now, Mr. Vincent was kind enough to donate some beautiful red cedar lumber for a project that we've been needing a long time here at Oklahoma Gardening, which is a couple of benches for the visitors that come to our studios. Now, helping out in that project was a student organization from OSU here in Stillwater called ALCA, or the Associated Landscape Contractors of America. And of course, Alan Jobs, our studio grounds manager, was there to help out in the construction of the benches, and he's joining me to show us what they came up with. Now, Alan, the bench looks great, but how long do you think it really took to put one together like this?
Oh, it took us a little longer than it needed to because we were designing it, and a normal person would take about 4 hours. We spent about 6 hours just working on it.
Okay, because you had to split the lumber, kind of draw out the plans and come in mind. Now again, it's very simple in construction, but you've kind of put the polishing touches to it by smoothing up the lumber. What'd you do to get prepared for it?
Well, after we split it to the length that we needed, the width that we needed, we first routed it using a 1/4 inch roundover bit in a router. Really simple, easy to do, adds a nice touch to it. And then we took 100 grit sandpaper and sanded all the edges. It just really added a nice texture to the wood, made it smooth and really look good and polish up.
And all of the edges are very smooth, and of course that's important on a bench when somebody's going to be sitting on it because of their clothing, those types of things.
It's just a safety measure.
Right. Now, really, I think I'm kind of surprised at how simple the frame is, and really,
Oh, it's very
all
simple.
there is to it is just what?
Well, there's a front leg to it, which had some shape, and we needed to have a little bit more space, so we just left a space in here. Then a back leg. The back's about 31 inches tall. The seat from here to here is about 15 and a half, and the height is from here down to the floor is about 15 to 15 and a half. That gave us a seat level of about 16 to 17 inches. Worked out great.
Now, once you get the frame on each side like this, you're putting your boards across.
The seat right across, and we're putting a little bit of an overlap, about 3/4 of an inch, and a 3/4 inch spacing in between each one of the boards. A little bit more here in the back, about 1.5 inches. And then we started just a little bit above the top here with the board, and then 3/4 inch spacing down on the way down.
And again, we've got three pieces of lumber here for the seat and 3 for the back. Now, how long or wide is the bench?
The bench overall length is 5 foot 60 inches.
And it's pretty secure and heavy to sit down, and then light enough to move where we need it in the garden.
It's real easy to move around the garden, and it's heavy enough that it just stays put.
Now, one of the keys to holding this all together is through your screws here. Tell us about that, Alan.
Well, what's most readily available is a zinc-coated screw. We use 2.5 inch screws. Now, on some places said not to use on cedar. Well, we asked, well, what do we need to use? And they said, well, these will work all right. What we found is that the zinc-coated will bleed. You might notice some black running marks from the screws if it sits out in the weather, and it reacts with the cedar. What they recommend is go with a stainless steel screw, which is very expensive, and or a new ceramic coated screw.
Okay, so even though we've used a zinc coated, finishing it off here is going to help us with the Thompson sealant.
Right.
Okay, so it gives us a little bit of color contrast in the wood and helps protect it for a little bit longer longevity. Well, Alan, of course, it looks good, and we want to thank you and the student organization for helping us out, and of course Mr. Vincent for donating it. And next time you're by the garden, stop by and enjoy the bench just like we will be, I'm sure.